Camp- Welcome to this episode of Campus Cuts. I'm your host, Tanaka, Tava, and today I have a special and wonderful guest, a great colleague of mine, great friend, dear friend, somebody who is a servant leader, somebody that is all about leadership, that is always about mentorship and growing and investing to young adults, a connector of people, and just an incredible human being. I've had the pleasure to sit down and chop it up with Malarie Humble, a student development specialist at Texas A&M Galveston. What up, Mal?
Hey. Man, that's a good intro.
Oh, no, thank you. Nah, you're dope. You gotta let people in about what you are and what you're doing. So thank you so much for giving time and coming on the show, the Campus Cuts. And for anybody that doesn't know, Campus Cuts is an intergenerational culture show that brings together students, faculty, entrepreneurs, athletes, and community members from all walks of life to up in the virtual barbershop. Just an opportunity for people just to be able to individuals to talk about their different perspectives and what they want to see and their thoughts about society and culture. And I am super grateful to be able to share this space and you to hold space with me with somebody who is really is the embodiment of what the show was about, what the genesis was about, empowerment, somebody that's always about building community. So it was a no-brainer to have you on the show.
Man, I appreciate that. I've been looking forward to this. I'm super excited to be on your show, Tanaka. I mean it.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, so of course, I gave my introduction, but my first question for you is, what is your name, your occupation, where are you from? And we're going to tap in. Let's go.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Malarie Humble. My occupation, I am a student development specialist at Texas A&M University on the Galveston campus. And so right now I live in the Texas City area. I live in this area called Lago Mar. It's a really nice little place in South Houston. But I am originally from Nebraska. And so I just moved out here about 6 months ago in July. And so I'm new to this position. I'm new to this place, and it's been a crazy ride, but I love it down here in the South. I love the heat, the humidity, and I love the people down here. It's just different. So it's a cool community to adjust to, that's for sure.
Yeah, and of course, this is not your first time in Texas. Your first. What was your first time? When did you come to Texas first?
My first summer coming out here was back in 2016. When I started working with Pine Cove, that was my first summer after my freshman year of college. And then every summer after that, up until 2019, I was always working out here in the, I don't know, like South Texas area through Pine Cove. Such a blessing because it has brought me this far and like changed my life for sure.
Yeah. And we're gonna dive. I would like to dive deeper into that a little bit later, but glad that you are in Texas. Currently, I'm not there. I'm abroad, but that is incredible. The fact that happened, and so obviously that's how we met. We first met at Pine Cove,
Oh.
a great place for somebody that understands. So, but my question for you, Mel, is who is Mallory? Who is Mallory? Like, but despite the accomplishments and the achievements and whatever, who's the core of Mallory? Who are you?
Mm, that's a good question. I love questions like that. I love to ask people questions like that, but seldom do I think about my answer for it as well. But man, I guess I would describe myself as somebody who I'm very relational. I desire relationships. I desire friendships. Um, but I'm not like an extreme extrovert. I'm not like bouncing off the walls, ready to talk to just anybody. But I love building deep
Yeah.
connections with people, and so I feel like most of my life, and I really discovered it in college. I'm someone when I'm in big groups, I love kind of maybe reading the room or like kind of picking up on little things here and there that I see in people. And when I notice something where I'm like, that could be a connection, or maybe it's the opposite. I'm like, I don't even know what they're doing right there. I want to learn more. How can I insert myself into the situation and get to know this person? I love doing that. And so if I'm in a really I don't know, like a scene with a lot of people. I spend most of my time maybe with like one or two, three people where we're having like deep connection, deep conversation, because that's what I live for. I hate surface level conversation. Um, that's why I'm not in certain fields because I can't last in those moments at all. I'm like, I don't know what to say after the weather. Like,
Yeah.
what's your trauma? Tell me about, like I want to, I want to get to know the deep parts.
Yo,
Maybe that's a
yeah,
little too
yeah,
deep,
yeah,
but
yeah,
yes,
yeah. Yeah. What makes you tick? I mean, obviously, you study
the
psychology, so duh.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I think that's a huge factor of it. That's what makes me wanna go deep with people and understand their stories for sure. Um, but yeah, so that's the big one of the biggest words to describe me is relational, but I'm also pretty, like, adventurous, and I love to laugh and just be a goofy idiot with people, so I love surrounding myself with people who are just hilarious and sarcastic. I love dry humor, even if it goes a little too far, I will always crack up at those jokes, even in probably inappropriate times, but that's the way I am. Um, but yeah, I don't know. And being like adventurous, like I'm not afraid to say yes to stuff, but I also am a little bit logical where I'm like, I'm gonna think this through a little bit. I'm not just gonna say yes blindly, but I'm always looking for ways to have fun with people, whether that's like driving out somewhere randomly to just visit a friend and like grab a meal with them, or I don't know, picking up with some people on a huge trip somewhere else, like across the nation. Like I'm happy to do that. So I'd say I'm a pretty adventurous person, but I don't know. Those are kind of the big words that I'd say to describe myself.
Right. Relational, intentional, and adventurous. I mean, that's I guess that's why we connect, right? Yeah, that's how we connected. And man, you are an embodiment of that, and that's so true. So, of course, going to the first bit of what you said of like, you're not about the circle, like, you want to be able to go deep with people. How was that cultivated in life? Like, what was the catalyst for you in order to start doing? Like, who were the influences that helped you be able to understand and become and wanting to seek deep relationships?
Mm, that's a good question. I would say growing up, when I like think about like my core memories with my family, I grew up really close with both sides of my family. I had deep relationships with my cousins, my aunts, and my uncles. I'm so thankful for that, and that's such a privilege to have. And when I look back on it, I'm like,
Yeah.
man, like I was surrounded by people who were storytellers. Like I have an uncle Ben who can just tell these elaborate stories with all these crazy details, and you just want to gather around and listen. And so I think like being in that environment where it's like everyone has a story to tell, and like it's time to listen, it's time to buckle up and just pour into whatever you're about to hear. I feel like that influenced me where I grew up just desiring to hear stories or tell stories with people. And as I grew up and once I got to college, I got really blessed with like finding solid community through like the college ministry I was a part of, and also the sorority I was a part of, Kappa Delta. And I think it's the Lord just, I don't know, knowing my heart's desire. And I continue to find people who had like those similar values of like love storytelling, love to like find ways to be creative in the way that they were able to connect with people. And so um, I don't know. I think it's following a path of just finding out my desires really quick as a child because I was blessed with family that showed that to me, and then finding friends who are like that as well. And so and there's so many things that attach onto it too, like studying psychology. Like the basis of psychology is like understanding people's stories, understanding their experiences and how they can speak about it and how they can describe it and helping them describe it as well. And so um it's just funny when you think about the paths that we take. But yeah, I was definitely surrounded by people who cared about making connections. And if I wasn't in an environment where that was apparent, I usually strive to figure that out, how to get out of that environment or change the environment to find that in it. Because I don't know, I'm really inspired when I get to hear people's their past or their experiences in the moment and how they're processing it and what they're thinking about it. So yeah, there's a lot of influences, but definitely my family. I would
Mm.
say so much my family has made an impact on that.
Wow. Wow. That's a blessing to be able to have family members or have people in your life that are able to hopefully cultivate that gift. And because what you have, it is a gift, obviously,
Mhm.
because it's very, like you have the way that you move, you have a way of being able to create space, especially in the space in where it's non-judgmental, and then people
Mhm.
to be able, and because of your earnest and your curiosity, you're then able to really break it and shut it down in order, and after that, be able to provide value. So you know what I'm saying, like that,
Thank you.
that in itself is a gift, and that makes sense of like why you are the way you are. Because I always want, I like, for me, I'm really interested in, like, all right, cool, I'm interviewing this guest. This might be my friend. This might be home. This might be somebody that I don't know. Why? Why are you the way that you are? What made you do this? What happened?
Right.
What did you do? Because again, it opens, because at the end of the day, when I through this journey that I've been through interviewing so many amazing, wonderful people, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and all this stuff, it's again, we're all the same, just the different shades, different colors, whatever. But
Mhm.
like we all have a fundamental desire, human desire, to connect and to have
Yes,
connection and to share love and all that. Saying. So,
absolutely.
I don't know, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Well, yes, I agree with that. Like like we're not created to be alone. Like that's biblical. Like we know that, and you see it whether it's in the media and the stories we hear today. Like loneliness is hard, and oh my gosh, we could talk about that forever because COVID, that's been impacting us for the past 2.5 years, and it's created loneliness. And I think if anything we've learned, especially now over these past couple of years, is like, man, we desire connection and we need it to operate in a healthy way. And I agree. And it's just like we have this natural desire as humans to build community and to understand each other's stories and to connect. That sometimes it doesn't always work out perfectly, obviously. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, when you really think about it, we're made we're made for connection, and it's hard to avoid it, which is a
Yeah,
blessing.
yeah. It is true. And actually, that's actually a perfect segue. I wanted to ask you is like, okay, so
Mm,
obviously 2020 was such a crazy wild year. And I think that was like a year after you graduated, right? Like
yeah.
your undergrad, right?
Mhm.
And so I wondered, like, how was that for you? And what is it like? What is it like to be somebody, or how was it for you to be alone or to experience loneliness for somebody
Mhm.
that is such a connector and is really about like building deep connection? How
Yeah.
was it, and how were you able to navigate that? Like some practical tips in order for you to, to go through that, for anybody that's still dealing with some loneliness.
Yeah, absolutely. Man. So so I graduated undergrad in 2019 in May, and then hopped right into grad school that fall. And I stayed in Lincoln, Nebraska. I got my bachelor's and my master's from the same university. Um, and during grad school, so like 2020 through 2021, I lived in a house with some girls. Started off five of us, and there were four of us because one got married. Um, and I'm so thankful I had that environment because we really depended on each other. And and the cool thing is that not all of us were the same. We weren't all extroverts. And I think we were split most of the time of like introverts and extroverts. And it was a time of learning for sure because we were all experiencing this loneliness and capacity. Most of us were in grad school or finishing up undergrad. And so this transition to the online world, a lot of us were working from home, and I think we did a really good job as a house of like just being as safe as possible. Sometimes even we felt crazy for what we were doing, but we were, in the moment we were doing the best we could with the COVID guidelines. And so um I feel like I think of so many times that I remember us sitting in the living room, like just talking in the moment of like how we were as we were going through this super this time of like seclusion in the world. And I'm really thankful for that I had my roommates to process that with, and to continue to process it. Like, and we still talk about it now that we none of us really live together anymore, but like we still talk about like, man, like isn't that crazy that we like lived through like, the beginning of the pandemic when things were like shut down and like you had such limited access. And so for me, I really valued the times that we had to just talk about how we were feeling. We had a really safe environment at our house to just be honest and open about what we were going through. So, I mean, it's a hard thing to tell people to do, but like my biggest piece of advice is to find where is that little bit of community that can help you through this period of loneliness, whether that's your roommates or, I mean, COVID's taught us that we can have relationships like, from miles and miles away through like apps like Marco Polo or FaceTime. And you know, fighting to find that connection is really important because I think during COVID, like in those moments of like loneliness, it's easy to just kind of want to fall into it and just there's a lot of negativity that can follow it and whatnot. But you really have to fight it and find those people that maybe you can connect with in any kind of capacity. And so for me during that time, and we were able to communicate. Sometimes that looked different. However we needed it to be, we were really quick to adapt and adjust. And I'm so thankful for those girls because we learned a lot together. And sometimes it was really hard. It wasn't like perfect and we're like, oh, we all know how to communicate perfectly with each other. There were hard times where we had to be honest and be like,
Yeah,
I hated that
yeah,
you said it that way. I That's not how I respond. Can we try this again? And so it was so important for me to have those core group of girls that I could just be honest with about what I was feeling in those moments.
yeah, yeah. And then I mean, of course, obviously this is like a and so like it seems like you've done it twice. Like a bunch of people, and I'm myself, and I'm in a transitioning period. Just
Mhm.
graduated, and you just graduated, you left, and you moved. It's like it's kind of like you were already in a transition period in itself, like going to graduate school. Now, like while you might have been on the same campus, you're not doing the same things that you once were, like as an
Right.
undergrad student. Like it's like
It's
how was
different.
that? How was that transition from undergrad to grad? Like, I want you to like go dive deep into that if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Because that was something I struggled with at the beginning and then at the end of like my journey in grad school. Because so my degree, my
Really?
master's degree is it's in higher education administration with an emphasis in student affairs. It's a mouthful. And basically what that means is because I have this degree, I can work at any college or university, community college, at the staff level, and any type of support services for students. And I love my job. Um, but it was interesting because my grad program, you have an assistantship, so you work for a department on campus, and I worked for our College of Education in the recruitment and academic advising field. And it was really weird for me to go from being a student who was super involved, loved my student experience, and really like lived it up, then to being this I'm not a staff member because I'm working on my graduate degree. Like I do not deserve like the phrase staff member yet. But I'm not a student because I'm now held to this higher standard of like you're learning how to help students, you are helping students, but like you don't have the title yet. And it was a really weird transition of like just knowing how to handle that with like confidence and grace because there are
Mm.
moments where I'm like I'm helping a student understand their degree, but then there's moments where like I want to have fun with my fellow cohort members as like a grad student, but like, you have to be responsible and like know the limits and things like that. Not that I was doing anything crazy, but it's just like um I started kind of I mean, like, that was my first step into, like, professionalism and, like, knowing that you have to hold yourself to a high standard and who you represent and things like that, and, so that was, like, a funny transition period that I just didn't see coming, and I don't know why I didn't see it coming, but, and then towards the end, I'm like it's like I'm applying for jobs and I'm trying to prove to people like, "Look, I'm a professional. I have all this experience because of grad school. Please accept me and think I'm great, please." And then it's hard because you just feel like so small and like, oh, my accomplishments are worth nothing. They're not even going to see this. Like, I should have done more of this. I didn't do this enough. And it's like it was this constant roller coaster of like, am I confident? Am I not confident? Like, do I have experience? Do I not? Am I, like, am I worthy? And so it was so weird. But then on top of that, again, COVID happened and like I missed out on a lot of like in-person experiences that could have helped me like with furthering my experience in my degree. But at the same time, like now that I'm in a job, like it didn't fully hold me back. Like I still I got what I needed and like the Lord used that time to like prepare me in a lot of ways. But man, it was this weird thing of like kind of struggling with that like student to staff member. It was just different. And I didn't have many friends in other degrees that had that same experience because like they went into degrees where like there was no question of like, am I a student or am I a professional? It's like, no, you work in HR, like you are a professional and that's your job. So that was kind of weird, and just kind of having like a very small group of people that could like relate with me in that experience was different. And so it was hard. There was like definitely a lack of connection for like 2 years for me there, where I just had to adapt and adjust with it, you know?
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Mm.
That's really refreshing, and thank you for being honest and transparent about that, because it is
Yeah.
like, bro, like life is confusing, like
Yeah.
especially after, when you've been told, like, okay, you've been on this roller coaster where everything was so safe, like you are a
Yes.
student, and the first moment, like, was that the first moment in your life where you actually had to deal with some sort of like ambiguity of like your identity, and kind of like low key put you in like an identity crisis?
Honestly, like now that you say it, I would say, yeah, absolutely. It was so bizarre because it's this being a student in college, it becomes your identity. Like when people are like, "Oh, so what's life look like?" You're like, "Oh yeah, this is what year I'm in school. This is what I'm studying." And you get so used to just like people expect that of you. And then the transition to like, like I am a student, but I'm also working on this professional degree and I'm getting these experience. It's different, and it's like you're constantly explaining yourself to people. People never understood my degree. Also, they'd always be like, "Oh, so you're gonna be a principal?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have pantsuits. I don't do that. No." And then like I have to like explain it, and so I just felt like I was constantly explaining myself to people, and it was exhausting. It was tiring.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so that now with that, so that's now to kind of like see where you are today, right? This is kind of like a deep, not a deep question, but
I love
it's
it.
like, you felt like you continue to explain yourself. Do you now feel that you are today and you don't have to explain yourself? Like when did you give yourself permission to say, you know what, I don't have to explain myself to anybody? Have you ever felt
Mm,
like that vindication for me? I'm already I know where it comes from, and like I'm living my purpose.
mm. Like I wouldn't say that I don't feel like I have to explain myself anymore, because again, like I'm in a position when you hear student development specialist, it's kind of like, okay, so what does that mean? But I feel like, so I don't feel like I don't have to explain myself anymore, but I feel like I've grown in my confidence of knowing how to explain myself in a way that's
Mm,
empowering, and I don't feel like I'm begging for their approval of what I'm doing. It's more like, "Hey, this is what I do. I love it so much. These are the things that I get to do. This is how I hope to grow in it." And yeah, that's like a snapshot of it. I don't feel like I have to just explain everything and validate it. It's more like, "No, I am validated. I'm a salaried employee, and like they care about me and they want me to be here." So I feel more confident explaining what I do, if that makes sense.
mm, mm. That's good. That's good. That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And now
Yeah.
I'm kind of want to go back to a little bit back into. There was one question I wanted to know. Was like, yo, what was like, so through the pandemic and everything that you did when you were having like, with your girls, and then after that, grad school. What were some of like the
Mm.
top things that you learned, or you felt like top ways that you've grown as an individual through that time?
Mhm.
What were some of the learnings, and the, like, takeaways from that experience?
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, man.
genuinely just curious, interested.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, dang, that's a good question. I feel like I learned so much during that time. Y you know okay, so the funny thing is one of my roommates, her name's Cassidy, and, oh, she's such an incredible person. She's someone that really expanded my mind on what it means to be a learner, and how being a learner is, like, such a beautiful
Mm,
gift to have, and such an incredible thing to be, because not everybody is a learner. And so she taught me that through so she was also in grad school at the same time as me. She's also still in grad school, and she's getting her PhD because she's super smart and just incredible woman. And she studies communications and oh man, I'm gonna botch it, but like her emphasis is looking into how like the healthcare field supports uh families as they lose loved ones. Like super dark, sad
Mm.
stuff to study. But that's what she studies and it's her passion. And my one of my favorite things was coming home and getting to hear her talk about just what she's learning in her classes or what she would gain from the interview she would do for her thesis and interviewing these people and hearing about these hard, terrible experiences they're going through, but also like what the outcomes are of it and what they're learning. And man, I just loved having these conversations with her where I had barely any idea of like the stuff she was studying. I could understand the, interviewing people and wanting to connect with them and hear their stories. But man, like this healthcare side and understanding grief, like I don't know this. I'm not an expert in this. And I loved hearing her talk about it and seeing her obvious passion for it. And it was just so cool that we created spaces for each other to just be open about what we're learning, and no one had to be the expert in the room, but we all wanted to hear what the other was learning and what they were going through. And so and Cassie is just somebody who, man, she always had a book about something else, like a new topic, a different topic I didn't even know there was a genre of. And like she's just someone that chases after learning, and it made me want to be that way too. And I feel like she definitely influenced all of us as roommates, just to have these cool conversations and ask questions about things we didn't know. Um, and so I feel like I grew as someone who wants to learn and gain more from my interactions with people. Um, but yeah, just to pursue those conversations where I'm not going to be the expert in this conversation. I almost have like nothing to give other than asking more like, what? Like, what does that mean? Can you explain that? I don't know what that meant, And I'm so thankful for that because now, like as a professional, I think it's good to ask questions, especially when you're a new employee. If you're not asking questions, like you, that might hinder your growth. Like you need to be asking questions, even if you feel stupid, even if it's maybe the second time that you have to ask it, you need to do it because if you want to understand whatever the content is, whether it's someone telling you about their life or it's literally understanding like an important project you need to work on, if you don't have this learning mindset, it can hold you back. And the nice thing is like you can become a learner at any
Mm.
moment. It just takes the you
Mm.
just have to take the
Mm.
opportunity to sit and listen and ask a question. And so I really gained that, I think, living in that house just by living with someone who is studying something I had no concept of at that time.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Having that learning mindset and just being able to sit down and ask questions. I mean, because I thought because for me, I already thought that you were that type of person anyway. But like the fact that you said, nah, that Cassidy was able to help push you to an extent that you
Mhm.
didn't even think about the capacity with, and being able to have the humility of saying, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
it and for you in your life, do you always feel like that you had did you ever feel that you had to put the pressure for yourself to feel like that you had to know everything?
I wouldn't say all my life I felt that way, because like a big part of my story, I mean, it's probably obvious in my answers. Like college was a really influential time for me, and before college, I was a little bit of like a hood rat and didn't push myself, didn't want to learn, didn't care. Wanted to do the bare
Yeah.
minimum. I was the worst, and it took like a scary situation of I got in a car accident, almost lost my life, and kind of just had this huge like realization moment. It's just one of those moments in your life where you're like, shoot, I need to turn this around. And I was also very aware of like college could be like a great place to turn a new leaf. And so I went like, and I'm glad I had that mindset. But then going into college, I started to struggle with anxiety and depression in really hard ways where even though I had these like amazing communities around me, I still didn't know how to be open and honest about what I was going through and how I was feeling. And a lot of those struggles that I was going through is
Mm.
because I put these really crazy expectations on myself like, "Bruh, you were the worst back in high school. You need to be the best." And it's just like there's no room for that like healthy transition of like learning how to grow and become better. And so it took a long time. I would say like late sophomore, early junior year of college is when I learned the importance, at least, of having healthy expectations for being the expert, being an intelligent person, being a good friend, being a good listener, all these things. So, like, I wouldn't say my whole life I've been someone that, like, I don't know, has those values of learning or has these expectations of being the expert. But thankfully, like, through hard experiences, hard learning moments, and mentors who've come alongside me, I've learned how to slowly progress in that way and to do it, with grace and healthy boundaries. Not saying I'm perfect at that. I'm absolutely not. But like these past like 5 years have been really influential in helping me kind of shape my perspective around that.
Mm, baby. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is, man, this is why I love doing this. Love it. Oh my gosh. Like, these are the golden moments. Like, thank you for sharing that and understanding that, yes, you're not perfect. But like the evolution of being able to give, of course, because once we like we mess up, it's like, okay,
Mhm.
I was at the bottom, hyper mode, and then after that you're
Yeah.
like and and then from there it's like you found the equilibrium,
Yeah.
because one, shout out to the grace and the compassion of the Father,
Yes.
but not only that extension, but that allows you to give grace and compassion for yourself, right?
Absolutely.
And that's a beautiful testimony. That's a beautiful way of being able to continue to transition, like with your evolution and your growth. And speaking of that, obviously you are in a position that has. Now, when I think about you, I think about Brene Brown. To me, you are my Brene Brown. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm like,
Oh,
yo, I'm real life seeing a Brene Brown. Like because again, listening to your story and
that's so
listening to
nice.
her story and how she struggled with anxiety and all this stuff, not
Mm,
really knowing and all that. But like, and of course, you are influenced by her. Like it's adamant. If you don't know who Brene Brown is, y'all better look her up. She's super duper well known researcher,
mhm.
graduate student at University of Houston, who talks about leadership and development, vulnerability, all this stuff. Like you are exemplifying it. I feel like you're somebody going that path, right? And so
That means so
for me,
much.
my question for you is like of somebody,
Mm,
of somebody that is influencing and connecting with so many people, right? Like, what has your journey? What has your journey been when it comes to compassion and being able to give compassion and learn that, especially as a woman, right?
mm.
Where like society tries to put you in a box or say this or that, and then that's not going more of like the equity and good question. You know what I'm saying? Like, what role has compassion played in your life, and how have you been able to
Mm.
hopefully distribute it or like show that to other people, but professionally and personally?
Dang. Yeah, man. I need to think about that. That's a big question. I mean, dang. Yeah, compassion. That's a good word. And I'm like, man, do I exemplify that? Um, okay, so I would say when I think about like my upbringing, how I grew up, the environments that I was influenced by, I grew up very like middle class, like white family, grew up on a farm in Nebraska, like small town, then went to a predominantly white institution, went to UNL, and blessed with a lot of opportunities. I mean, oh gosh, like when I think about compassion, I think of empathy. I think of like having the ability to put yourself in the shoes of others. Not as much giving sympathy, just like, oh, I'm sorry for you and your experiences, but like, wow, like I hear what you're saying and I see how that's affecting you. And man, I really want to respond and care for you in a healthy way. Like that's empathy. And I think about how because of the environments I grew up in, I lacked empathy for a while until the Lord placed me in experiences that I wasn't
Mm,
comfy in, and where I was, like not in my A game, or like I just wasn't, it wasn't the norm for me. And I'm so thankful for those experiences. As hard as they are for anybody to go through, man, you learn the most in them. And I, why am I saying all this? Like I think that like my capacity for empathy grew a lot again in college because I had a class, a leadership and diversity class where um, we really processed our experiences growing up and how they influence our ability to process, adjust to, and respond to like diverse situations with people, cultures, settings that are different than our norm. And that class, I took that my junior year of college. That opened my eyes to like how much I lacked compassion and empathy for people that were different than me. And it was so embarrassing to realize, but also just like,
Mm.
man, it was humbling and made me realize that my capacity for compassion is so much bigger than what I thought it was in those moments. Cause, you know, like I thought I was a good person. I thought I was a loving person. I'm, you know, like a friendly, nice person that loves people. But man, that class really showed me that I was selfish and like chose my norms and like what I wanted over being uncomfortable and learning about new experiences, learning about people who are different from me and how to actually accept and like love these people, whatever that would look like. And
Mm.
so my journey with compassion, I feel like I have taken time to process that, just realizing when it comes to issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, it took me a long time to understand that those issues are so important and they can really open up your heart for compassion and they can grow, they can realize your need for growth. I feel like I'm all over the place. I don't know if that's making sense, but like um, where I am
No,
now,
yeah.
it's like I want to serve students to the best of my ability. I want to serve my coworkers and my leaders, no matter their background, their experience. I want to take time to hear their stories, to understand, not assume that my norm is their norm or assume that I can instantly put myself in their shoes, but to realize that I need to have compassion, to take time, to listen, to be quiet and find the ways that I'm called to like serve and care for whoever this individual is. And so, yeah, I would say like compassion, like when you really think about having compassion, it takes a lot of putting yourself on the back burner and taking time to be others focused and to not make it about you. And so I'm really thankful. Shout out to Helen Fagan. Dr. Fagan changed my life with that class because it, I mean, I'm a white middle class person. Like white people need to take classes like that where they can learn how to have compassion for norms that are not their own, since most of life is the
Mm.
norm for us as white people. So that's my journey on compassion, I guess. That's what I'd say.
Wow. Well, that's real. That is very, very real. And again, thank you for sharing because see you to have the humility and say, "Hey, yo, bro, this is a problem. We need to do better," right? And
Yeah.
again, to get outside of your norm, like that's where the real growth happens. That's where we continue to have a better, deeper understanding, not only of ourselves, but then for other people. And of course, you now working in such a field where you are advocating for the equity of all people, but also especially you as a woman, and just life that is um that's so real and honest for you to even admit, like, because I was watching a video of Jay-Z and Will Smith, and Jay-Z was like, man, Will Smith, like, and it will, you look like you've done a lot of therapy and a lot of like growth and a lot of like gone through a very spiritual journey of understanding yourself and as a beauty man. And like Will Smith like laughed and he's like, oh yeah, haha. But then Will Smith, Jay-Z was like, no, because people don't have, like, a lot of people are not willing to go to the lengths to even do work, to have that self-analysis, that
Mm.
self-reflection, and then after that even implementing the change and to even execute of being able to be mindful or being able to go to different classes where is that, I mean, of course, because like the human experience, right, we're a product of your environment, and if you happen not to be in a diverse environment, it's so simple when everything is just a status quo and everything's going to work to your favor. And for like, when you show up as an alien, you're like, oh, and then you see like somebody new, and it's like, oh, who are you? What is this? I'm just different. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to be with it. But it also takes a sense of humility for you in order to combat that comfortable of, that's weird. I don't want to do it. To yeah, let's face it. Let's move. Let's push the needle a little bit, step by step, in order to create some sort of wave. So
Yeah.
again,
I mean,
thank
it
you
is the bare
for
minimum,
sharing
though.
that and be vulnerable in that.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's also this thing
Bare
of like,
minimum.
I'm sharing that, and I appreciate your encouragement, and I received that, but I'm also like, man, but like that's the bare minimum, and it happened to me. Like I'm like that happened kind of like at a later on in my life than like I wish it would have. But yeah, if I can encourage anybody else who's out there who's maybe has like the same background as me, like please push yourself to learn. And I'm not saying that I'm the expert. I'm not. But like if we're not pushing ourselves to learn about cultures and experiences different than our own, like what's the point? You're just living in a bubble. And that's not living, you know?
Mm, that's good. That is really good. Wow. Um. So with that being said, that's not learning to live. Like, what does it mean to live? Like for you, what is it? What does life mean to you? What is the meaning of life in your eyes?
Dang. Come on, Tanaka.
You know me, but
I know.
Actually,
Classic. Man, I feel like I was just on the phone with you like a couple weeks ago,
chopping
and
it
you asked
up.
me, yes, yes, you asked me a question similar to this of just like, what does success mean? Like, what does success look like to you? I'm like, man, I don't know. But I mean, they go hand in hand of like living your life. Like everybody wants their life to be successful. I mean, but to live life, oh my gosh.
What does success and live life for you? What does it mean for you, man?
Yeah. You know, I think it is pushing yourself, making goals that push you, making goals that are achievable, but like not easily achievable, that you have to like work for them, but you're also excited to work for them. You're not feeling, down or just like overwhelmed by these goals you make for yourself. But it's like being excited about this new thing that you want to accomplish, and what is that going to look like, and how is that going to change my perspective and my everyday life, and so like for me right now, like I would say like a lot of living my life, like I'm very focused on my career right now. I think anybody in their young mid 20s, like we're like let's see what this is gonna turn into. Like what can I do right now to like just achieve in my job and what this field is. And so like a lot of the things that I'm focusing on, a lot of my goals are around like, hey, how can I like find data to prove that like my investment in my students is making a positive difference? And like that's kind of a vague goal, but I'm really excited. Like, do I think about it every day when I wake up? Probably not. But like for the most part, like when I'm going into my job, when I'm working on these projects that excite me, I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like, how can I keep track of this and like kind of compare this to the other things that I do? Like, how can I get the students like opinions on this or like their feedback on this? And so like that's one of my big goals that I'm working on now. And I know it's going to benefit me in the long run of knowing that about myself as I move up and move into other positions and titles, like showing that I was someone that cared about the student experience and wanted to make a positive impact. And so like that's just like an example of how I'm living my life right now. But like whether that's focusing on your career, focusing on how you invest in your family and your community, whether that's like a church or just like an area that you really invest in where people are present, like how are you making space to have goals and to achieve those? Because I think if we don't have like at least a little bit of some kind of goal setting in our life, you can be really, what's the word, like placid, or just like you can turn into apathy of just kind of like, oh, I'm just coasting,
Plateau.
I'm doing.
This apathy, stagnant.
Yes,
Mhm.
all those words. Yes, all those synonyms. Yes, like you just kind of stay at the same rate. And I mean, you'll probably get disappointed at some point. And so I think having healthy goals for ourselves, and not only putting it on ourselves to have these goals, but like make your mentor aware, make your friends aware, like welcome people into those goals so that way you also have accountability, cheering you on, but also like kind of shaking you to wake up when maybe you're struggling in moments of chasing after those goals. So I would say I look at my life in terms of goal setting because I think that's a healthy way to grow and to just kind of keep track of like what's going on in your life and how are you achieving those things.
Yeah. Wow. That's good. What scares you?
Man, right away, like I my that's a dang, that just changed. Okay. So that's where we're going. Um, I would say as much as I hate to admit it, and it's something I need to work on, like one of my biggest fears is negative opinions people might have of me. And I hate that. I hate that that's my fear because I wish that wasn't my
Mm,
answer. But I know that that's my fear that I struggle with right now is like, like what are people thinking of what I'm doing right now? Or what are people thinking of like what I share or like my maybe like my beliefs or like my goals. And so again, that's something I'm working on. But like I'm scared of letting people down and I'm afraid of people like yeah, how people might perceive that. But now that I'm saying that out loud, I'm like, man, that's an unhealthy fear. But it's also valid. But I think that's something that's always been instilled in
good.
me from
That's
a
valid.
young age. Sorry, what did you say? Oh,
Yeah, I said yeah, that's valid.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. I mean,
I said
it's
that's valid. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's something that I've struggled with for a long time. But I would say like I'm in a place now where I recognize that that's a core fear of mine. And I'm like, I'm at a place where I'm like, I really want to unpackage that and kind of, I don't know, like what's a healthy way to kind of like change that fear or like change at least like my mindset and how I respond to that. But I wouldn't say I know the answer to that right now. So if you have any advice, feel free to share. But that's probably one of my biggest fears is just like letting people down or like being afraid of like what they think of like I'm doing, I guess.
Yeah. That's real. Thank you. Do I have any advice? No. I don't feel qualified to give any advice on that. I was talking to myself in
Man.
the mirror. People are like hit me up like people like people hit me up like yo on DMs or text message. Bro, man, I need some advice, and I'm like, I'm the last person that could. Like personally for me, I'm like I'm the last person that I could give advice. Like I don't feel like I'm qualified. I'm like I haven't felt lived a lot enough life to give advice. Like because again, it's like who for me, my head is like, who do you think you are
Right.
to give some sort of advice you can give whatever,
Honestly.
but also at the same time, right? But like that, that is the ego. That's the ego talking, saying like, you know what, like, my experience is my experience, and there is some validity to that, and I might be possibly will be able to offer like some sort of like gem that can help move, like because when I think about advice, it's like people you think most people think in order for you to give advice, and well, I used to think that in order to give advice, you have had to accomplish some sort of status or some sort of
Right.
notoriety or some sort of nobility or like whatever social status or standing because you've made it or you've done something, and it's big and grandiose. But really, and how my life has changed over the past two couple years, actually no,
Hmm.
last 5 years, is the most valuable advice is the ones is kind of the things most people don't notice. Like it's the small nudges. It's the 1%, because I was at that compounds at the end, right? And so
Yeah.
I guess for you, even though personally in my head, my ego is telling me I don't feel qualified, but this is something I used to struggle with, and I think everybody does.
Hmm.
It's the fact, one is like, and it goes back to the scripture. Um, what Galatians 6:9 or something? No, Galatians. I think before that, he's like, who are you to think that you're too important to help people, not to help people?
Mm,
That's in Galatians. I remember that. And
mm,
also, and then another scripture from that was like, Second Corinthians 4:7, where it's saying that for everybody has been given the light and the treasure, and whatever, that even though we're broken vessels, we're here to share that light and love.
mm,
And of course, back in John again, the world will hate you. Like, if the world hated Jesus, the world is going to hate you, and some people may not like you. And honestly, it's beautiful to have that and to know that, because you're not for everyone, but the people you are
yeah,
for, you'll be chosen and you'll be given. And to so it is just to have confidence in that, and understand, to one, ground yourself in truth, and second,
mhm,
understand that, hey man, I'm me, and I'm the only one that will ever exist in this lifetime, and I'm
yeah,
here and ready to go. So I guess that's my practical
absolutely.
advice.
That's good advice. Dang, that's real good. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And that's rooted in scripture. So dang. Thank you for
I,
sharing that.
yeah, I'm again, like, you don't want to give something and not have some like sort of data, or
Yeah.
like,
To
one,
back it
whether
up.
scripture or with scripture, but also like actual data and scientific fact, because I know that's just me being like the scientist to me, like to explore the research. But yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. But thank you for sharing that, dog. Wow, this is good. Ooh, this is gonna set. I'll tell you, this podcast is gonna set so many people free. No cap, no kizzy.
Praise God.
Nah. All right. So these are my last couple questions. They're kind of like the, I don't want to say big questions, but they're kind of like more of like the, I guess, like more of your social commentary of society.
Mhm.
What is something that you like to see change in the United States?
Mm,
Your POV.
man. I mean, there's so much. I mean, overarching, because I mean, there's so many individual things that we can hit on, whether it's talking about like racism, rights for people with disabilities, wars that are going on, financial issues. There's so much brokenness, obviously, in this world. That's not hard to miss. Um, and I mean, again, going back to Brene Brown, like she's so influential on the concept of understanding that like empathy is absolutely necessary for people to succeed as individuals, for them to feel valued as individuals, for them to feel seen. It really takes something as simple as like listening and putting yourself in the shoes of others. And I'm saying this not with not with the hopes of trying to sound like someone who's like rose-colored glasses, glass half full. Like if we all were just empathetic, everything would be better. That sounds annoying, but I mean there is truth to it. And
Yeah.
man, I would love to see more young leaders come into these positions of power, whether it's in the government, whether it's, like becoming CEOs of these influential businesses that deeply impact our country, whatever it may be. I want to see like young leaders from our generation grow up and lead with empathy and, you know, not make assumptions for whole groups of people based in what they think is right, just based off of their own experience. I mean, that's what I wish there was, because I think if we started at that one point, that could lead to really great conversations and really great programming and change that could really help turn our world, turn our nation like into a better place that cares for its people. I mean, even if it's people always talk about like how can there be billionaires and then there's people who are literally homeless, and there's so many things that impact that answer, but I'm like, hey, just having empathy for the people who are sitting like up high making these decisions, if they could have empathy for these people who are struggling, who have experiences different than their own, like that would make a world of a difference. And so I hate to sound rose colored glasses, but yeah, like if we had more empathy in the people who are in positions of leadership that make changes and make choices, I think that would make incredible change.
Mhm. That's good. Thank you.
Mm.
Um, wow, that's good. Oof. Yeah. Uh, you're doing a great job. That was a good
Thank you.
man. You did a great job. The bod, man. Wow, so much gem, so much wisdom. Um, wow. I'm just gonna let that sit there.
Oh man, I appreciate you.
The second to last question is, what are 3 things that you would tell to your 18-year-old self?
Oh man.
You
Oh, so much,
what,
so
25
much.
now? 25?
Yeah.
You 25 now?
No, I'm 24. I'll be 25 in August.
25.
So,
Okay. Okay. So
um,
that's a pretty good number. That's a pretty good window. That's about like 5 years. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, almost damn near.
Dang, that's crazy. Okay. To my 18-year-old self, I would tell
Oh,
her
six,
be
six, six,
60. So wait,
60.
what's
Yeah,
the
six
age?
years, 6 years. Yeah, you're 24, right? Minus 18.
No,
Yeah,
that's
6.
6.
That was 6 years ago. Yeah, whoa,
Oh, I hate that. Oh,
flies
I
like a
hate
that.
that. Um, yeah, okay. So to my 18-year-old self, I would tell her just be honest. Tell people when you're struggling. Don't keep it to yourself. It's going to lead to unhealthy habits that are going to impact you for the long run. Just talk about it. Find the people you can talk to and don't be afraid. Just be open and honest. Um I would tell her um keep seeking after women who show like strong leadership and compassion and the desire to invest in others. Like keep chasing after those relationships and learn from them. Don't be afraid to ask someone to mentor you or invest in you, because if they don't want to, they won't. But if they want to, like how great will that be when they say yes? So don't be afraid to ask and just learn from those people who have more experience than you. And the last thing I would tell her is man, keep spending more time with your family. Like keep going home, spend more time with your brother and sister and your mom, your dad, your grandma, because soon you're gonna move away from them and you won't have them at so ask them the questions and invest in them.
That's good. That's good. My last question is, what do you want your legacy to be? What would you like your legacy to be?
Mm. I think my legacy, I really hope that it's one filled with listening and loving others. Um, I mean, that's super simple, but like that's the basis of it. I really think that my legacy of however I move up in my field, in my career, whatever that may look like 40 years down the road, I really think that I can be successful if my goal at the end of every day is to like love and listen to people. And so whether that's like in a business meeting or in a one-on-one conversation with somebody, like I really just hope that I'm loving and listening people well, and that hopefully they, not that it has to be me, but I hope that that can help them do the same to others, just to love and listen.
Yeah. Wow. This is the last segment of the show. It's the Speak Life segment where I just speak life and encourage my guest.
Mm.
And of course, I've been doing that all over. Man, you are living up to your legacy now. You are. You are learning and you are listening and you're loving other people well. And you do that well and you continue to grow that. So it's encouraging in order to see that in your fruition through our friendship, through your professional life, your career, your community engagement, your willingness to continue to have that desire to learn, to grow. It's incredible. And it's been a beautiful and awesome and incredible opportunity to be able to witness that from a first-hand point of view and up close. So again, thank you for you being a PB said, no cap. Hey, Mumbo, get in here, bro. But it's real. It's real, dog. And so
Thank you.
you're doing a wonderful and incredible job. And I'm blessed. I'm so grateful. You've changed my life. You changed you, and your impact in my life has been monumental. And I just want to let you know I want to give you your flowers and that, and also give you your flowers like for who you are and who you're becoming. So shout out to you. Thank you for
Mhm.
holding space and sharing your space and sharing your story on this pod. It's man, I've been looking forward to this, and I'm super like this blew my expectations out of the water because I knew you were going
Mhm.
to do such a great job, and I'm so grateful for um
Mm.
for you. So thank you for being on
Mhm.
the show.
Thank you, Tanaka. I mean, I've been looking forward to this too, and I I would be so mad at myself if I didn't take time to tell you you've made a huge impact on my life and so many others. And the fact that you hold a podcast like this and you also create space for people to just feel loved and encouraged, and you're a really positive influence. So thank you for wanting to have a conversation with me and giving me the space to talk about these things. I appreciate it so much and I love you so much.
Oh man, love you too. I appreciate that and I receive that. To close, where if you would like to people like for to follow you, where can the people find you at or follow you at? Uh,
Oh,
J PB said you're amazing, Mal. The female Toby Nwigwe.
that is such a compliment. I love you, Phoebe. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yes, if people want to follow me, I literally had to pull up my own Instagram because I don't know my own handle. But Mallory Louise, Malarie, for sure. Follow me or add me on LinkedIn. I don't know. It's the same name, but yeah.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for hanging out on the pod. And you know what? And we are done. And